When it comes to cannabis, Joe Biden is like most politicians of his generation, way behind the time. So why is a weed lover like me voting for him in November? Because I want to end America's racist and oppressive war on cannabis as soon as possible. Police in this country will make over 600,000 cannabis arrests in 2020 alone, the vast majority for simple possession. And as always, the poor, minorities, the young, and other marginalized groups will be disproportionately targeted. President Obama didn't stop those arrests, and President Trump certainly hasn't been stopping them. So what makes me think President Biden will? He won't have a choice. Joe Biden has already changed his tune by promising national decriminalization, the removal of cannabis from Schedule I status, and a plan to expunge the records of those who've been arrested in the past. But hey, don't take my word for it. Even Tucker Carlson gets it.
Joe Biden has a brand new position on marijuana. He said that nobody should be in jail for marijuana offenses and that prior offenders should have their records expunged.
For the record, Tucker and I do not agree about weed.
How do we know that it's safer than alcohol and tobacco?
We can compare the number of people who die from each substance every year. Hundreds of thousands of people from alcohol and tobacco and 0 people from cannabis.
But we do agree that with polls showing 78% of Democratic voters now supporting federal legalization, the Democratic Party has got to keep giving us what we want. I mean, here's a Democratic representative from Oregon wearing a weed leaf mask to work in Congress. And here's the Democratic governor and lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania literally letting their freak flag fly to show support for legalization. Meanwhile, there's been over 2 million arrests under President Trump for cannabis, and the Republican Party, by and large, wants more of the same. Again, we're more than 2 million cannabis arrests into Donald Trump's presidency, and he hasn't lifted a finger to stop them. So let's put to rest any idea that this president supports legalization. In fact, the Trump administration has been quietly gearing up for a potential assault on cannabis, including in states where it's already legal.
A new BuzzFeed report outlines how the White House has assembled a committee of federal agencies to combat public support for marijuana.
In June, Bill Barr, Trump's controversial attorney general, was the subject of a congressional investigation after he targeted the cannabis industry in a series of antitrust cases so crooked that a Department of Justice whistleblower called bullshit on them in testimony to Congress.
Earlier this year, I asked the DOJ Inspector General to examine whether multiple antitrust investigations launched under Attorney General Barr were abuses of authority or other misconduct. The first matter that I referred to the IG concerned 10 investigations that the Antitrust Division launched into merger activity in the marijuana or cannabis industry. These mergers were not even close to meeting established criteria for these kinds of investigations. And yet, these cannabis investigations accounted for a full 29% of the division's full review investigations last fiscal year.
The whistleblower further testified that the cannabis investigations were happening because of Attorney General Barr's personal animosity towards cannabis, and were designed to drain the companies of time and money as a form of official harassment. Meanwhile, Trump himself believes that smoking pot lowers your IQ. But that's not why he's opposed to all 6 statewide cannabis initiatives on the ballot this November. It's because he's afraid that you'll come out to vote for weed and end up voting against him. Trump would rather that you and your friends keep getting arrested for cannabis than to let you exercise your constitutional rights. But again, you don't have to believe me because the president said so himself.
Please don't put marijuana on the ballot.
But despite Trump's opposition, citizens in Arizona, New Jersey, Montana, South Dakota, and Mississippi will get to decide on legalization, either medicinal or recreational, this November. And we all get a say in who represents us in Congress and the White House. Now, obviously, there's a lot more at stake this election than just weed legalization. But if you're basing your vote in part on who's going to be the best for cannabis and the cannabis community, then you really only have one, albeit flawed, choice. Smoke a joint hold your nose and vote Biden.